Hi, I'm BJ, and this is the Arcane Alienist Podcast. All right, I've got 3 games that I played in this week to recap. Pathfinder 2nd Edition, 5th Edition D&D Saltmarsh, and Dungeon Crawl Classics. But before I get into that, I got a call from Daniel Norton of the Bandit's Keep podcast and YouTube channel. Be sure and check out his work, both on YouTube and here on Anchor when you get a chance. So take it away, Daniel.
Hey BJ, Daniel from Bandit's Keep, calling in halfway through episode after not having listened to the previous episodes because my card just played the most recent one first. But anyways, you guys are talking about Tales from the Yawning Portal, and I gotta say, I mean, I don't know if Carl actually ran anything from it or if you have. Maybe you'll say that later, but I think that product is kind of terrible. And the reason why is because they didn't really change anything. So, because I had White Plume Mountain, which I was running in my 5th edition campaign, and I was like, oh, great, I'll get this, and then I can kind of see how they handle some of the, I don't want to spoil anything, but there's like things that are basically DM fiat and tests and stuff like that you need to do in there. And I'm like, I want to see how 5e handles it. And they didn't make any changes at all, nor tell you how to do it. And if you just went by the basic rules of 5e, it was like you could just walk through it so easily. And I played in Tomb of Horrors, and it was a joke. It was absolutely way too easy for a 5th edition group to complete Tomb of Horrors. Now, that being said, the Goodman Games stuff, which I have not run, but I've kind of looked through, it looks to me like they actually rewrote them for 5th edition, or at least they added a bunch of 5th edition stuff. So again, for 5th edition, which means it'll actually work better and you won't have these weird situations where it's like, well, okay, in this situation, every round this happens, but in AD&D, a round is 1 minute, and a turn is 10 minutes. And they use that stuff effectively in some of these modules that you don't have in 5th edition. So it throws off like everything, basically. But anyway, that's... so yeah, the Goodman Game stuff, yes. Young and Portal, no, for me anyways. I'm curious what other people think if they've used it, but yeah, I felt like Yawning Portal was a waste of my money. And honestly, when I read through it, I just kind of like threw it back on my shelf and never looked at it and just ran with the old module because they absolutely didn't give me any new information that I wanted.
Hey, Daniel. I have ran the Sunless Citadel from Tales from the Yawning Portal, and it ran fine. I ran it with some people who'd never played D&D before. We started off, we played 5th edition, and then we're going to move on to the second one, the Forge of Fury. So I started prepping for that, but then we haven't ran it yet. I don't know if we ever will. Those went really well, but those are 3rd edition modules, and I think 3rd edition probably contains a lot of similar design philosophy to 5th edition. So they were converted over pretty well, and ran, I think, as I would have expected, particularly for 1st, 2nd, 3rd level characters. But I didn't get to any of the, obviously, to the stuff that they ported in from AD&D. I suspect the stuff that's from 3rd and D&D Next playtest probably works okay for 5th edition, but yeah, I didn't dive into any of the AD&D stuff they included. So that's unfortunate they didn't think to hey, this particular thing is kind of incongruous with the way 5th edition works. Why don't we come up with the comparable way that 5th edition handles this kind of a situation? Because that's exactly what Goodman does in their conversions of these basic and AD&D modules to 5th edition, is when they encounter something that's like, in 5th edition this would be handled this way, so they just change it instead of just telling you to. I'm like I was thinking, like a random encounter. It says here's the random encounter for this level of the dungeon. It happens 1 on a D12. Well, you can that's perfectly fine in 5th edition. And then here's the table. If one comes up, roll a D6, and here's what they encounter. That works perfectly well for 5th edition. But then when it comes to things like there's a hidden treasure partial, or a hidden, anywhere in the original where it says they have a 1 in 6 chance, or there's some kind of dice involved, whether it's percentage or D6 or whatever, they go ahead and convert that to a mathematically comparable perception or investigation check or whatever the case may be. in when you'd call for an ability check or something that's uncertain and have to roll the dice on anything, that they convert it to the fifth edition style of rule, which is either saving throw, an ability check, a skill, roll, or whatever that might be. So yeah, I do appreciate that about the Goodman games, and I thought it might be fun to run Tomb of Horrors out of Yawning Portal as a preview to then doing the Tomb of Annihilation, just as a kind of bookend for that Schultz based adventure. But now it's good to know that didn't work quite as well, because you definitely don't want the Tomb of Horrors or White Plume Mountain, either one, to be a cakewalk. Fifth edition characters are tougher. I think you have to amp up your game if you want to have that same experience. It can be done, but you have to do it. You can't just convert the module without taking into account those kinds of things. So I'll take a look at those. But I'm sorry that product didn't work out for you. It worked good for me, but I haven't used the whole thing, and I've only, like I said, I've just run the one adventure in full and kind of dipped my toe into the second one, and those may share a little more common design philosophy and approach with 5th edition, given that they're coming from 3rd edition as opposed to coming from AD&D. So thanks for the call, Daniel. Hope to hear from you again. Wednesday night, I played in a Pathfinder 2nd edition game. This is my second session of this game. We are playing through the Abomination Vaults adventure path. This is a game ran by Carl Rodriguez of the GMologist Presents podcast. I'm playing a human wizard named Dr. Eleazar. His background is that he is he's a physician, and he is in search of information on this obscure form of magic called flesh warping, that is used to basically create mutations, magical mutations, I think. And so even though there's kind of some sinister connotations, I think his motivation is that maybe it holds a way to helping to, legitimately help people who have diseases or physical conditions that it might improve. But there's always a chance he could turn into a Dr. Frankenstein type character. The other party are Goblin de la Hood, played by Jason Connerly of the Nerds RPG Variety Cast. His original name for this character was Goblin Hood. He was a goblin archer. But he changed it to sort of a pseudo-French type of spelling. So it's not just Goblin Hood, it's Goblin, Y-N-E, Goblin de la Hood, H-O-D-E, I think is how he's spelling it. Anyway, Goblin de la Hood. It's a goblin fighter who's focused on the use of a bow. And then we have Kremak, a dwarf paladin, played by one of the other players who isn't a podcaster. And then our newest member is Felbar, a gnome who is an oracle, which in Pathfinder is another type of divine spellcaster. I think originally the idea was that they were to clerics what sorcerers are to wizards, with more of the spontaneous casting. Not know enough about 2nd edition Pathfinder to know if that's really what the case is. I'm sure Carl can call in and correct me if I'm mistaken on that. But again, Felbar is played by another character who's not a podcaster, so we don't name those guys out in the open since they're not part of the podcast scene. Anyway, but where we left off last time is this the Gauntlight Keep, which is this ancient ruined lighthouse, and it abandoned. Suddenly started to emit light, and the people in the local village are kind of concerned about it. There's an old, local. The town was founded by an adventuring party who kind of defeated this evil surrounded related to the Gauntlight Keep, I think is the implication. So people are kind of concerned that it's lit up again. What might this mean? So we started off last time outside the keep. It was my character, Dr. LZR, Goblin the Hood, and Cromac the Dwarf Paladin. Went in and explored a little bit, and I detailed that in my last summary. But we got to the point where we felt like we couldn't go any further. We were being drawn farther into the ruins, and one of these little Mitflit, which is a type of gremlin, was kind of running ahead and triggering encounters with other groups of his allies. And at last we heard him calling for the boss. So we thought, well, we're running low on. We've starting to take a beating now through a couple of encounters. So we decided to go back to town. And from a metagame perspective, we knew, hey, let's wrap it up and go back to town, because that'll be a place where new players can join us for next time, and we can come back and explore more of the ruins. So we started off back in town. We had taken some ears off the Mitflits, and I had collected some of their brains as specimens, thinking they're kind of fey, so there might be some magical properties that would be useful in magical research. Goblin de la Hood took the ears to the local constable, got us some reward for that. And then I proceeded, Dr. Eleazar, to a local place called Ren's Wonders, which is ran by Ren, who is an elf tiefling in Pathfinder 2e. So in D&D, at least D&D as we've established it for 4th and 5th edition, the current iteration of D&D, tieflings are their own thing. It doesn't matter if a tiefling as a child by a human, by a dwarf, by an orc, by an elf, the child is a tiefling. So if you have tiefling blood, you're a tiefling. Here it's treated more as a bloodline. So you have a base species, human, elf, dwarf, halfling, whatever it might be, and then tiefling gets mixed into it. So Ren is an elf who is a tiefling. She's an elven tiefling. And she runs a curio shop. She's kind of an eccentric. She's an astrologer. So that's the place we think maybe we can, sell these brains as possible. Curiosities or magic reagents. And she says, it kind of works on consignment. People leave things there, and if she can sell them to someone, then she'll, give you your cut. So I leave these with her and swap them out for some clean, empty specimen jars to have next time in my next foray. She says, come back later after the stars come out, and I will tell the fortunes of you and your companions. So we all regroup at the this tavern. It's called the Rowdy Rockfish, which is funny because it's described as a surprisingly calm and quiet tavern as opposed to the other taverns in town, which are very rowdy. And I kind of made a joke that, hey, it's the Rowdy Rockfish. I wonder if they have like the Billy Big Bass mouth. They have a magical rockfish on a plaque that sings and flops around. And Carl thought that was worthy enough to actually make happen. So they do have this magically animated singing and moving mounted fish on the wall of a rockfish. But this is where we get introduced to Felbar. He's in there. Just kind of on his own, and we come in and fresh off a day of adventure and a little bit of we didn't make a lot of money, but we got a little bit. So we offered to buy him, include him in our round of drinks, start talking to him, and kind of get to introduce all our characters, reintroduce who we are and who he is, and then we're like, hey, we're gonna go get our fortune told. Why don't you come with us? So he comes along with us, and so this is Ren, this elf tiefling. She's got a big telescope, so she takes us out on the balcony and shows us her telescope, and she looks up at the stars, and she's taking some notes, and we watch her go through all these obscure calculations. There's a sense that I get that there is magic about it, even though she says it's not magic, it's science. There's something magical going on. And then she tells our fortune. And one of the things she tells us is that it was very fortunate that we have sort of met Felbar, and he's kind of with us, and that we should remain companions. And then as the night wears on, it's getting late because we had to come after the sunset. So she says, just crash here because it's always nice to have adventurers who can guard the shop overnight if anything happens. So we just kind of bunked down there for the night, and set out the next day to return to the old ruins of the Gauntlet Keep. We retraced our steps, and we had noticed where previously we had noted there's sort of a moat around the ruins. There's a moat house and a bridge that we had gone through the moat house before and crossed the bridge into the ruins of the castle or whatever it is. But there's another tower connected by a bridge that we had noticed before that these things like the Mitflits had connected it, caused some vines to sort of. There's a way they could use vines to cross from the moat house to this other landing, and there seems to be a dead one just kind of dangling there over this platform in the distance. But I noticed, I think it was me that noticed it, my character that rolled on our perception, that there's another live Mitflit that's using the vines to dangle it over the water. We weren't really sure what it was up to, but we kind of recognized it as the one that kept fleeing with. He maybe we had him almost dead, and he ran into the next room and activated another encounter, and then he hid in the back while we took care of that encounter, and then when that went against the Mitflits, he ran out the next door into the next encounter. So we already kind of have it in for this guy. So Goblin de la Hood takes a shot and rolls a crit. And Jason did this. The dice were with Jason until they weren't. It just the kind of thing that happens when you play role-playing games. I think he critted this one and just savagely, just plugged this guy, and dropped him right there before he could react and do whatever he was planning to do. We still don't know what he was using. Whether he was dangling this thing over the water to try to summon some, if there's some kind of crocodiles or some kind of monster in the water that it was trying to get the attention of, or it was just trying to draw us nearer into an ambush. We don't know, but so we just retraced our former steps, and we're able to make our way through the ruins and then out to where we had left off the last battle, and then through a door there, we find ourselves on the same platform that's crossing another part of the moat into a tower. And this seemed to be where this guy was running to say, "Hey, boss, help!" The last time, but there's this skeleton, like this 8-foot tall skeleton. Looks like it's posted guard. It's not an undead skeleton; it's just a big skeleton standing outside the doorway to go into this tower that's connected to the keep. I say it's a tower. It may have been some other kind of structure, but and it looks like, as Carmack the dwarf inspects it, it looks like it's got a big mace, or a morning star. It's got a morning star, and it's kind of connected to where, rigged up so that if you topple it, it'll set off some kind of. We can just tell it's trapped. It's gonna do something. So Goblin de la Hood, even though he's a fighter, he's got some training as a criminal. He's got some thievery ability. So he comes up and they're able to disarm the trap and recover this mace, which is not worn to the extent that the skeleton. So it's pretty clear that this is a magic weapon of some kind. Then Carmack listens at the door. He can hear several voices, which he deduces are Mitflits, and they're talking. And we decide, we're just going to kick in the door and get the drop on him. So he kicks in the door. Jason, playing Goblin de la Hood, he gets off a couple of really good shots. I think he drops the Goblin King. Actually, I think I got my spell off first. It was a arcane bolt. It's kind of like chain lightning. And they're in there. There's I think 4 or 5 Mitflits, and then they've got this one who's got a crown on his head and this big spider kind of next to it. So I think I hit the spider, and then it arced over to the king and kind of did a little damage to each of them. But then Jason very quickly finished off this mid-flip king or boss or whatever, again with very high rolls with crits, and I think he killed him outright. I did minimal damage to him, and then he killed him outright. So most of the credit goes there. And then so we roll initiative for an actual combat, and Kramak the dwarf charges in and continues to fight with the spider, and then the other Mevlets start to circle in on him. He's then joined by Felbar the gnome as well. Although before Felbar got into the fight, he cast a spell that kind of meant that the spider would take, I can't remember which spell it was, but the spider would have more difficulty hitting Kramak the dwarf, and then Kramak would have more of an advantage. I think he got a bonus to hit the spider, so tipping that particular fight in the advantage of our ally. And then I did a sleep spell, and I think I put one mid-flip to sleep, and one of them I kind of slowed him down for a minute, but I didn't quite put him to sleep because he saved. Then Jason got at some point he was, like I said, he's rolling really good with his archery, and then he rolled a critical failure, and rolled on the table, and what Carl came up with was that his bow cracked and was no longer useful until he could get it repaired. So it wasn't broken beyond repair, but it wasn't going to be useful until it gets repaired. So he had to, for the first time, pull up his hand axe and his shield and go into some melee combat. But at that point, we'd pretty much turned the tide of the battle and won. So, and we were in pretty good health, so we didn't have to go back to town. But that was a point where we got to stop. So that's a pretty quick summary. It did, it sounds like not much happened, but a lot did happen between role playing some stuff in town and getting some information, and then going back. And even though we really only had one fight, it was a good 3-hour session. So great game. Enjoying playing with those guys. Carl runs a really good game, and so we'll play that again in another couple of weeks. All right, Saturday morning, not quite the same crew as the Pathfinder game. Back to Dungeon Crawl Classics again with Carl Rodriguez running the game as our game master, and this is I'm playing Burnfried the Cleric. We're once again joined by Jason Carnerly in this group, who is playing Idris the Necromancer, and then Arlen Walker from Live from Pelham's Wasteland podcast and YouTube is playing Ardath the Human Warrior, and then Otto the Dwarf, whose player actually couldn't make it today. It's kind of the reverse of the last time. Okay, last time we played, Arlen wasn't able to make it, so we did a flashback where it was just the other three characters. But this time we decided to get back to the main adventure, and we just kind of took steps to make sure that Otto, even though we used him, he didn't die, even though he came close once. And that was partially on me as a cleric, not rolling as well as I had in the first 2 or 3 sessions of this game. It wasn't quite as bad as the previous one where I couldn't do anything spell or magic wise, but it was we finally had to take a rest, primarily because the spellcasters were starting to lose their spells, and but where we picked up, we had charged into this. We'd fought our way into this castle that's sitting in this small lake with these plant creatures that had been harassing us from the moment we came through the portal to this. We don't know if we're on a different world or a different part of our world, but we came from a very desert, hostile desert, dry area into this very verdant place of forested hills and mountains. And pretty soon came on this castle. But from the time we stepped through the portal, we were set on by these weird 4-armed plant creatures. They were just nasty and vicious, and At first we tried to talk to them, and they wouldn't entertain any sort of, hey, we're not here to cause any trouble. They just attack. And so we had come across this castle where we thought, well, maybe we can go in there and rest because the forest just seems so hostile. But of course, this place turns out to be full of those things. And we had done pretty well against a pretty large group of them, so we pushed farther in the castle. And where we had left off is there were a bunch of them, kind of looked like they were getting ready for some kind of feast or something in a feast hall. But there was a hag in there chanting. That's where we left off. So we decided to, the hag was chanting and preparing for something, so they didn't really notice us looking through the door at them. So again, I started off rolling pretty bad. I think I tried to turn them again because I can turn these kind of creatures because of I'm a neutral cleric. It didn't work, but Idris, played by Jason, decided to use his new magic missile spell against the hag, and he rolled so high, he did like 50 points of damage, and just obliterated this hag before she could react or even notice our presence. So that sends all these creatures into a frenzy. So Ardoth, the fighter, Arlen, he just comes into the room and starts swinging. We've got him enlarged. Idris has got him enlarged to a large size, so he's tougher and he's doing more damage, and he's swinging this huge magical two-handed sword, and he's just cleaving through things. And so that fight went pretty well. Some morale broke on some of them. They fled out some doors, and we were doing pretty good like we were last time. And then we can see that one of the adjacent rooms is a kitchen, and there's some of them in there, and they don't want to come in the room, but we hear this kind of growl, and a troll emerges from the kitchen, and it comes straight at me, and he's speaking in a language I don't speak. I think it was giant, and so at first it looked like maybe he was just like lecturing me, because he didn't notice the body of the hag. But then he switched. When I didn't understand him, the troll switched to common and said something like, "Oh, you look tasty." So he clearly wasn't trying to make friends. So that, I'm there standing in in the attack range of the troll. I can't just turn around and run away without promoting attack of opportunity. But I got pretty good armor. Ardath is within range of the troll. He turns to face the troll, and of course, it's hard to take down a troll because they keep getting hit points back. So Arlen was given a pretty good beating. But in the meantime, because this troll has now introduced a new level of danger and something we can't just put down immediately, some of these other plant creatures start to regroup and come back, and pretty soon we find ourselves surrounded. So we kind of had Otto in the back because his player wasn't there. Otto the dwarf, who's also enlarged though and enhanced for combat. Kind of got him into the fight, but he went down. I was able to heal him and keep him from dying. But we managed to finally overcome the troll. Ardath, the warrior, cut his head off. There were two fireplaces, so we put one head in one fireplace and his body in another fireplace. And inspected the kitchen. Found a key ring that appears to have all the keys to this to the rooms in this castle. At this point, we were all. I had accumulated a lot of deity to his favor. Jason and I lost 3 of my four first level spells. Jason's character had lost one of his spells. And had another one that he'd lost in the previous session we hadn't rested for it to come back yet. So we thought we need to take a rest. We don't want to go back out in the forest. We thought, well, we have the keys to the keep. Maybe we can lock ourselves in a room, and even if they're more, we know that we can tell there are more things because some of them ran away. Some of them in fear, some of them looked like they were maybe going for reinforcements. So we decided to go ahead and take a rest. After a quick inspection of the dining hall and the kitchen, well, there's a cauldron that looks it looks nicer than there's a stew boiling in one cauldron and another one that's boiling this nasty putrid green stuff. We're not sure what. So we dump that out. It appears that the cauldron we suspect it might be magical. It's too light to pick up for its size, and it's cleaner and in better condition than anything in the castle. So we noticed that. In the dining hall, there's a portrait of a woman, kind of a sinister-looking woman, human, and there's a plaque that names her as an oxen. But there are daggers, 2 daggers stabbed into the wall, into her eyes. And one of those daggers turns out to be magical once we inspect them and use detect magic. So Idris takes those daggers out, and then behind the portrait chalked into the wall, it says, "You have been laid again. 2 of the 3 are now mine." So we don't know what that means. I mean, we think, well, we just killed a hag. Hags often come in 3s. Does that mean, this was the third, the last remaining? Is someone like taking this hag's, sisters or the other members of her coven? Or what could that? We don't know. We don't have any other clues. So we decide to, we open one other room in this kind of an exterior tower of the castle, and it's empty. There's some swords hanging on the wall, but it's otherwise empty. But it's got a round grate in the center. So Ardath, the warrior, goes in to kind of poke around and see what's going on there. And the swords animate and come to life, but he's able to pretty easily destroy these 4 flying animated swords. The more interesting thing is there's some growling and roaring coming from the grate. So we kind of look down in there, and there's this huge, bigger than the troll, bigger than the one we fought, and it's like roaring, kind of a defiant challenge up to the room we're in. And we also kind of figure out there's some loose, like if you were to just step on that grate and not pay attention to what you're doing, you'd fall through and it'd be like a trap. So I outlined in chalk kind of where the loose place is so we don't step on it. And we thought, well, there's a troll in a dungeon pit beneath us, but it can't reach us. We don't know what else is out among here in the castle. So we just locked the doors to this room and decided to go ahead and rest. And we are able to get a rest and heal up. But there's noises and bumps in the night, but we're able to rest and reset. But in the morning, we there's some knocking and then a demand from the other side. The troll beneath us starts to growl and roar again, but it doesn't seem to be at any of us. It seems to be he senses something up there near us, and so I think what it indicates is there's maybe a rival troll outside the door trying to get in. But we also hear another, what we presume it is another hag, saying, you killed my sister, and this, but if you give me back our cauldron, I'll let you leave. So now that's kind of where we left off. We're kind of in this standoff with what we presume is to be another hag and another troll on the other side of the door, with some more of the remainder of these plant creatures. Obviously, there's a level below us. We could kind of tell from looking down in there that there may be exits out of the room that this big troll is in. We know there's a level above us as well. So the thought is, well, do we negotiate with the hag? Do we kick open the door? And I mean, we made it okay the last time against a hag and a troll and a bunch of these creatures. But the other thing we were thinking about is this troll doesn't seem to be angry at us. It seems to be eager to fight another troll. Carl said after we made some ability checks and putting two and two together, it almost seems like maybe this is the black sheep of the family that they've kind of locked away. So he doesn't like the other trolls. But maybe if we could get it to be on our side. So we thought, well, why don't we give it some food? But time was up, so that's where we left off. Is we're going to discuss maybe online through the Discord server for the game what we want to start with next time. Do we try to befriend the troll? Do we want to just drop down there where it is and take our chances with it first? and then try to explore the bottom side without, a way out or some other way of sort of taking the castle for our own sort of, temporary base of operation. I don't know. Who knows how long we'll be here. Anyway, we've got a little bit of planning to do as we negotiate with this second hag. So again, a great game. We had a lot of fun. I appreciate playing with these guys. And as always, Carl is a great game master. So that's Dungeon Crawl Classics. Saturday night, I got to play in the Ghosts of Saltmarsh 5th edition game. This is a game I've joined late, so I'm the newcomer to the party. We're on the verge of 7th level, so I came in as a 6th level character for the first thing, and then I leveled up to 7 when everybody else did, so I'm a 7th level paladin. It's kind of neat. As I mentioned last time I talked about this game, one of the treasures, just where they happened to be when I entered, was a belt of stone giant strength, and it really wasn't needed by anybody else in the party, so the new guy gets this belt of stone giant strength. So I'm playing a paladin. His name is Sir Hartwin. We fleshed out a little more of his background this time. He's a knight of Keeland, and so he's been in Ghosts of Saltmarsh. They've set up the situation in Saltmarsh is there's a fairly new mine several miles away that's brought a little more attention to the region. And so you've got, Saltmarsh is kind of growing. But you've got the old families of Saltmarsh who have kind of always been very independent, and they just kind of manage their own affairs. And now you've got newer people who have moved in as part of this boom who are much more, they see themselves as citizens of Keelan and loyal to the crown. And so they're kind of law and order people. They've caused things to happen to sort of crack down on piracy and smuggling and fencing and things like that, which, it's not that the citizens of Saltmarsh were pirates or thieves or anything, but some of the local pirates and thieves may be kind of friends, distant relations, I think is how it's supposed to work. And so they might have turned a blind eye to some of the smuggling and more or less victimless kinds of crimes, for the most part. Just so, because these are their friends and neighbors and relatives and things like that. Or maybe out of, fear of protection money so that things don't turn violent. It is a kind of a port city that deals with pirates and those kinds of figures a lot. So there's this tension among the citizens in Saltmarsh. So, and then there's this adventuring party comes forward before I join them, and deals a big blow to the pirates and the smugglers, and has a couple of important things they do to ingratiate themselves to the people of the town, which is reported back to the crown. And then as a knight in the service of the crown of Keelan, I get dispatched to go try to join this party and help them because they're doing good things, and also make myself available to the local authorities on behalf of the crown for any problems I might be having in and around. So I'm kind of I'm not the new sheriff in town. They have their captain of the guard, their commander. I'm just kind of there to help as needed as a paladin and as a knight. So that's my character's kind of why he's there. So we started off. Not many people could make it tonight, so the DM decided to go ahead and just run with me and the other guy who could make it. The other guy that made it was playing Caden, who is a ranger. So we've got a paladin and a ranger. And how he sets it up is it's kind of a few days since the last adventure, and Caden is wandering around town kind of stressed out. He doesn't always get along with his, from my understanding, in character, doesn't always get along with his crewmates in the party. And then Hartwin is on his way to try to meet the commander of the guard. And they had a previous adventure with this guy where they rescued his daughter. So they kind of bump into each other. And it's like, oh, hey, how you doing? Where are you going today? And we discover that, I'm going to try to find the commander, and Card knows him and can show me where he's likely to be. So we go to this guard tower and run into the commander, and I introduce myself and why I'm there, and show him my writ from the royal court, that my credentials and my bona fides and my station, and that I'm a knight. And then there's a list of sort of tasks that they have that they need maybe help with, that they'll pay a reward or a bounty on. And a lot of them have to do with trouble around these mines that are being operated by a clan of dwarves several miles away. And so we agree to go take a look. So we get there. We establish that I do have a summoned mount, that I'd summoned him in some time before and never dismissed him, so I don't have the Fine Steed spell memorized as a paladin, so I couldn't do it, but just that we'd done it before, and then I swapped out my spells the next day, but he's around until I dismiss him or he goes down in battle. And I decided that my summoned mount is a huge, gorgeous black destrier with a white star on its forehead and snout, and perfectly perfect white socks on its legs, and gleaming, shiny, beautiful coat, and a big, powerful horse. And of course, because he's a paladin's mount, in this is 5th edition, the physical form is as a war horse, but it's a celestial spirit inside the that I've summoned, and so it's a little smarter and a little more powerful than a typical war horse, and we have a special connection. So I'm like, hey, hop on. The ranger didn't have his own horse, so I'm like, hey, hop on. We'll there's enough room for both of us. So we ride the several miles to the mine. It's the dwarves have put up a wall, and they've got a barracks where they sleep, and a tavern, and an office for the leader of their clan, who also sits on the Salt Marsh Town Council currently. So they're not going to let us in. They're like, nobody's allowed in here. And I'm like, wait. And we again show my credentials, and they let us in. And we go into the tavern to have a drink and decide what we're going to do. We're able to meet with the dwarf who she sits on the Salt Marsh Town Council, and is kind of among the loyalist faction, because they're here, I guess, by permission of the king to operate this mine, even though it's a human kingdom. And she's like, yeah, miners have been disappearing, and there's a lot of trouble down there. So yeah, we need somebody to help us take care of it. We need to kind of keep this discreet. We don't want people freaking out, because there's enough tension already. We really don't need, we don't want to be blamed for problems. And some of the people who are not, some of the old families and the people in Salt Marsh who aren't real happy about increased presence of the authorities. We don't want to egg them on, because they'll blame us for this, because we came here and opened the mine. So we go down in the mine to poke our heads around. We find some places where there's been obviously signs of a struggle. There's blood. We follow the blood trail through a couple other mine, openings in the mine, and then we're ambushed by these 3 skeletal archers. And these are not your typical skeletal archers. They're proven to be pretty powerful. They move faster and with more grace. But there's a 5-foot chasm separating it, or it's not a huge chasm, it's like a 10-foot. It's 5 foot wide and about 10 foot deep crevice. So I jump across and I'm able to engage them in melee, because they had some special abilities. It was a lot like fighting. Turns out they were able to kite. They had a thing kind of like a rogue's cunning action, where they could disengage and move without provoking an attack of opportunity. So they were just kiting and pelting us with these enhanced archery abilities they had. And I got a pretty good armor class, plus the heavy armor master feat, which means I have a damage reduction. And they were doing some pretty serious damage. And of course, being a paladin, the DM ruled that they were kind of drawn more to me. I was kind of, which is kind of the idea I built my character around is to kind of be in the thick of things and draw the the attacks as much as I could so that the other characters can use their special abilities and training and things like that. So I just jumped the chasm and realized quickly, oh, well, these are skeletons I need to abandon. Usually my character wields a great sword, but I have a flail as a backup weapon. So I switched to the flail and was doing pretty good. So these things just while the ranger had used some, he's got some range spells because of the type of ranger he is, and done some, I think, Eldritch Blast, and they were pretty tough. They didn't go down very easily. But as soon as we sort of got the upper hand in melee, but we managed to kill one, but the other two slipped away and jumped back across the chasm from where we had come and started shooting at us again with with arrows. So I leapt back across and thought, what am I doing? They can run away, but I have a 23 strength because of this belt of giant strength. So I ran up on the skeleton that attacked that was closest to me and just grabbed it with a grapple. It's like, it's a +9 athletics in lieu of attack, and he was not able to get away. And then I was able to crush his skull in with the flail. The ranger summoned an area of thorns. I can't remember the exact name of that spell right now. I ought to, as much as I've ran 5e over the last several years. But spike growth, that's the name of the spell. So the other archer couldn't really approach without taking a lot of damage. And it kind of forced it ultimately to back down this tunnel where it could still kind of shoot at us, but it couldn't just move in a lot of different directions the way it had been able to. So he drops the spikes and chases it down the tunnel. I tried to use a compelled duel spell, which paladin is a paladin spell that means if you can get the spell on an enemy, they have to fight you. They can't move more than 30 feet away from you, and they take a penalty if they try to make attacks that don't include you. So it really is designed to kind of pin down an enemy, and that's like, well, if I can't, he's gotten far enough away that I can't run up and grab him, maybe I can keep him from running farther away so he can't do that to my partner when he gets up on him for a melee attack, but he made a saving throw. So I had to chase it down a little bit more, but we ultimately overcame it. But we got beat up pretty bad. I mean, there for a second I was thinking, wow, we're going to die. But we made it. At some point, as I'm fighting with one of the skeletons, the ranger, Caden did use a Cure Light Wounds to kind of keep me from going too far down. Because they were really, I was drawing aggro, as you would say in World of Warcraft, because I'm a paladin, and the undead just kind of sense that divine power, I guess. But then I basically used my lay on hands to kind of we split the pool of lay on hands I had when the battle was over, and thought, I don't think we're going to make it much farther without the rest of the party. Why don't we go get them? Well, he has a stone, a magical stone that I guess in the previous quest where they had rescued the commander's watch commander's daughter. She said, here, you can use this to contact me if you ever need anything we can help you with. So he uses that to send a message to her to say, send the rest of our party here, and we'll be waiting for them here at the mines. So we went back to the tavern, and I said, give us the strongest stuff you have. And so the bartender gives us the strongest stuff, this being a dwarven tavern that they have. And we both had to roll Constitution saves. We both failed our Constitution saves, but before the DM kind of told us what happened, what do you think you did? Well, the ranger also can play the lute, so he starts playing the lute, and I was like, well, my character starts leading everybody in a sing-along, and we're having a good time, and then we wake up in their barracks with terrible headaches and hangovers, and apparently had caused quite a ruckus the night before, and we got a stern lecture from the dwarf who's in charge of everything. And then we're just going to kind of wait there and get our heads clear and rest some more until the rest of the party catches up. And that's where we ended. So that was a really fun little side quest. I think, fortunately, we got into what was intended for the entire party and quickly learned, I guess we tested the waters to see how dangerous things were, and then did a retreat, and they're going to wait for everybody else to show up. But I had a lot of fun. This is a new group. I don't know any of these people very well. I just kind of responded to a comment on a message board about, I'm going to run this game and I'm looking for one or two more players. So that's how we got into it. I got into this. So, but I'm enjoying it. Everybody it seems pretty cool so far, and I'll, as that game goes on, I will continue to provide updates. And that'll just about do it. I want to thank Daniel Norton again for his call at the top of the episode. And I want to thank everybody out there for listening to the podcast. I appreciate you taking some time to hear me prattle on about my nerdy hobbies. And I'll be back later. Take care out there. And that's it for this episode of The Arcane Alienist. I want to thank Dave Bone for the cover art that I use for the episodes. Check out ironseer.com. And the music is Come and Get It by Scott Holmes Music. Thank you for listening. Give me a call sometime through the Anchor app or at the Anchor website. And I'll be back in the future with another episode.